Good morning, good afternoon, mga ladies and gentlemen. Alas 4 na po ng hapon. Ang ating pag-usapan sa ngayon ay si Bong Revilla po ay humihingi ng dasal na sana ay hindi siya malagay sa alanganin na naman. Kasi tandaan mo, nabilanggo na siya noong araw sa usapin patungkol sa kay Napoles. Nakasurvive siya, nanalo siya sa kaso, pero nakulong siya mga ilang taon din. At masakit, siyempre. Ngayon, parang hindi siya natututo. Kasi bakit? Mas malala ngayon ang nagawa niya kumpara dun sa panahon ni Napoles. Sa panahon ni Napoles, ang kaso laban sa kanya ay ganito. May mga PDAF kasi doon ng mga senador. Sa panahon na yon, we are talking about 2004 hanggang 2010 na taon. Ang uso noon sa Kongreso ay yung tinatawag na PDAF, Priority Development Assistance Fund. Ang kaisipan niya sa likod niyan ay kani-kanyang senador ay may priority sa pagdating sa pondo na kanilang mga proyekto. Ganon din po sa mga congressmen. May priority din po sila sa kanilang pondo. So para matugunan yung kanilang pangangailangan sa pondo, ay nagkaroon sila ng desisyon sa Kongreso na bigyan ng 200 million pesos kada senador. Panahon ni Miriam yun. Panahon ni Mayor Lim na naging senador din siya. Panahon din ni Joker Arroyo. Panahon din ni si Drilon. Ang hindi kumuha doon ng kanilang PDAF, hindi gumamit na si Mayor Lim. Ang alam mo si Joker Arroyo din. At ang isa pa ay si Panfilo Lacson. Sila gumamit ng kanilang PDAF pero mukhang hindi pa si Panfilo Lacson senador noon. After Gloria sa naging senador. Si Bong Revilla, isa sa mga senador na nag-enjoy ng kanilang tinatag na PDAF. Pero bago ang PDAF, nais ko lang ibalik pa rin sa nauna pang panahon. Ang tawag na CDF, Countrywide Development Fund. Tapos, dahil masama na pakinggan sa tainga ng mga tao, pinalitan na po nila. Hello, Stephen King? So, nung pinalitan ng PDAF, pero ganoon pa rin ang konsepto. Hindi nagbabago. So, kada senador ay binigyan ng 200 million na kanilang gagastusin. Bahala sila mamili kung saan nila na proyekto ito ipapasok. At ang kada congressman naman ay binigyan ng 70 million kada isa. Bahala din sila kung saan papasok. Ang katwiran sa 70 million lamang ay dahil distrito lamang nila kailanganin gagastusin yung kanilang proyekto. Natapos yun. Nabalahura yun. Nagkaroon ng kaso na sinampa ni Greco Bilica na panlaban sa PDF at nagdesisyon ng Supreme Court na bawal ang PDAF sapagkat po ang PDAF, ang nature niyan, maglalagay ng pundo ang Kongreso. Pag sinabi ko Kongreso, kasama senador, kasama ang congressman na nag-agree sila, nagkasundo sila na bawat senador, ulitin ko lang, 200 million. At bawat congressman, 70 million. So, yan ang kasunduan nila. At sabi ang ginawa nila, sila mamimili kung saan ilagay ang mga proyekto na kasapi sa kanilang PDAF. Ganon din ang senador, ganon din ang mga congressmen. Ngayon, ang nangyari, dahil sa sila mamimili, kailanganin ngayon ng desisyon ng bawat senador at bawat congressman. At ang desisyon na yan ay ibigay nila, sasabihin nila ngayon doon sa sasabihin nila doon sa nagpapatupad ng proyekto. Nung during that time, ang nagpapatupad ng proyekto, bumuo sila ng opisina na tinatawag na TLRC, Technological Livelihood Research Center. At meron din sa NABCOR. So doon nakaparada ang mga pundo ng senador at saka mga congressmen. Susulat ang mga tumatawag ang mga senador at congressmen nandun sa mga NABCOR sa TLRC. Sasabihin nila, kagaya kay Bong Revilla, pakibigay kay Janet Napoles ang aking pundo at bahala na si Janet Napoles magpapatupad. In fairness to Bong Revilla, ganun din ang ibang senador. Nasadlak din niya si Honasan. Nasadlak din si Bongbong Marcos. Meron din siyang proyekto na binigay kay Janet Napoles. Nasadlak din dyan si Jinggoy Estrada na napakalaki binigay kay Janet Napoles. Nasadlak din dyan si Enrile. Actually, marami sila. Mas marami pa rin sa mga congressmen. Ganun po nangyari dyan. Kasama din dyan sa congressmen na nasadlak dyan si Douglas Cagas na congressman noon sa Davao del Sur. Na si Douglas Cagas, yan ay tito ngayon ni Mayor Joseph Ortiz Cagas na isa sa sinususpetsa na nagpapatay kay Dudong Bukol, ang barangay chairman sa Barangay 3 de Mayo. At ang isang sinususpetsan dyan ay si Santa Cruz Mayor dati na si Jose Nelson Sala. At saka ang isa pa yung kapitan na Colonel na hepe ng Digos City Police Station na si Lieutenant Colonel Glenn Ipong. So tatlo sila. Hindi natin alam ngayon kung anong ang follow-up dyan. Anyway, balik tayo dito sa topic. So ngayon, dahil sa ganun ang topic, sumulat si kaso ni Bongbong at saka ni Enrile, saka ni Jinggoy, sumulat po sila doon sa TLRC na ilipat sa kamay sa kumpanya ni Janet Napoles at bahala si Janet Napoles patupad. Sa madalit sabi, pinatupad ni Janet Napoles at ang kalahati ng pundo na nilipat kay Janet Napoles ay ibinigay kay Bong Revilla, ibinigay kay Jinggoy, ibinigay din kay Enrile, binigay din kay Honasan, kay Bongbong Marcos, meron din. So, nangyari, nung nagkaroon na ng kaso, ang kinasuhan lamang po ay si Honasan, kinasuhan din. Si Bongbong Marcos, may kaso pero hindi natuloy. Kinasuhan din si Enrile, kinasuhan si Jinggoy, pero yung prominente na senador, itong tatlo, si Jinggoy, si Bong Revilla, at saka si Enrile. Ngayon, ang depensa ni Bong Revilla ay hindi daw siya pumirma ng sulat na nagsasabi sa opisina na yon na naghawak ng pundo na ilipat kay Janet Napoles na korporasyon ang pera. Ang pundo na ipapatupad. Ganon din po ang depensa ni Jinggoy Estrada. Ganon din ang depensa ni Enrile. Ang kay Enrile naman style, hindi siya sumulat, kundi ang kanyang chief of staff na dapat na si Gigi Reyes. Si Gigi Reyes may inappoint din na isang tao na taga-sulat doon. In other words, talking it shortly, lahat sila ay nagdepensa na wala silang kinalaman. Hindi sila nasulat. Pero ang tanong, ang sistema noon, hindi maililipat ang pundo sa korporasyon ni Janet Napoles kung walang sulat ang mga senador na yun. Anyway, madalit sabi, na-acquitted si Bong Revilla dahil hindi napatunayan at napatunayan niya rin na yung pirma hindi kanya. At pirma daw yun ng kanyang chief of staff. Ganon din po nangyari kay Jinggoy. Ang chief of staff ni Jinggoy si Pauline Teres Labayen. At ang chief of staff naman ni Enrile ay si Gigi Reyes. Meron pa silang inutusan si Mr. Evangelista. So anyway, ganon mga depensa nila at nagtagumpay sila. Acquitted sila. Si Jinggoy, si Enrile patay na. Si Jinggoy at saka si Bong Revilla buhay. At nakalabas sila sa kulungan. Ito na ngayon. Pasok na tayo ngayon sa PDAF naman. Sa flood control project. So, sa flood control projects, ang ginagawa ng sistema ay ganito. Lahat ng congressman at lahat ng mga senador, sabi nga ni dating congressman Mike Defensor, sa panahon namin, PDAF lang. Ako, congressman, 70 million ako na binibigay sa akin at bahala ako magpatupad ng aking pundo sa aking distrito sa Quezon City. Pero sa panahon ngayon, Nagulat ako nung bumalik ako, bilyon-bilyon na bawat congressman. 1 hanggang sa 2 bilyon. Ganon din lalo pa mga senador. So sa panahon naman na sa gana kay Bong Revilla, ay ang nagsalita mismo sa Blue Ribbon Committee sa Senado ay yung taong mismo na nagbigay ng 150 million kay Bong Revilla. Kaya sad to say, bilang isang batikang abogado po na nakipaglaban patungkol sa ebidensya, I'm sorry to say, kung itanong mo lang, may basihan ba ang statement o ang sinabi, testimonya sa Senado ni Yusek Bernardo o Roberto Bernardo? May basihan po. Bakit po? Kasi unang-una, sinabi niya, personal na alam niya. At siya ang isa sa mga opisyal ng DPWH na nag-aasikaso ng flood control projects. So kung siya nagsasabingan na may binigay siya kay Bong Revilla, mahirap sabihin na hindi totoo yun. Isa pa, personal niya at napapatunayan niyan sa mga pera na nadala niya sa pamamagitan ng AMLAC. Ang AMLAC kasi po ay otorisado mag-record ng lahat ng mga transaction sa, halimbawa may bank account ka, personal mo bank account. Ang hindi mo alam, pag nagdeposito ka sa bangko mo at nag-withdraw ka, naka-record sa AMLAC. Ganon din sila ni Bernardo, ganon din sila ni Bong Revilla. So yung mga sinasabi ni Yusek Bernardo na nagbigay po siya ng pera, dinala niya doon sa bahay ni Bong Revilla sa compound na pinatayo ng tatay niya na white rock doon sa Bacoor, ay pinadala niya doon ng mga karton-kartong pera habang binababa, nag-uusap sila ni Bong Revilla. So ngayon umiiyak si Bong Revilla. Nasasadlak naman siya. Humingi siya ng dasal sa mga kanyang mga kakampi. Ang tanong, dapat ba siyang ipagdasal? Ang sagot, kung ako natanongin, kaibigan ko naman siya, i-depensa mo sarili mo. Try your best to show na hindi totoo yung akusasyon sa iyo, but then ako mismo na kaibigan mo, naniniwala ako sa akusasyon sa iyo na totoo. At dagdag niyan, ay anyway, hindi ka naman nag-iisa eh. Susunod sa iyo si Jinggoy, may bago naman na kaso si Jinggoy. May bagong kaso din, may paunang kaso para kay Joel Villanueva. So, yan ang nagiging problema natin ito ngayon. So, because of that, ay pag-usapan na lang natin na kung paano mangyari. At least, hindi ka nag-iisa, Bong. Andyan din, susunod din si Joel Villanueva, si Jinggoy Estrada, sigurado susunod yan sa iyo. Kasi ang testimonya laban sa kanila ay kasing lakas din ng testimonya laban sa iyo. That is what will happen. I'm sure of that. Itaga mo sa bato yan, Bong. Ito ngayon, pakinggan muna natin. At gusto ko makita ninyo mukha ni Bong ng mamakaawa. Ipakita natin ang mukha ni Bong. Pero dapat ba tayong maawa? Wala tayong pera. Sila maraming pera. Yan po ang katotohanan ng buhay natin. Ayan si Bong Revilla. Nagmamakaawa, humihingi ng dasal. Dapat ba natin siya bigyan ng dasal? Yan naman ang tanong diyan. Tingnan natin sa isang anggulo na pinapalabas ng statement ni Bong Revilla. Ito. Ipalakahin natin to. Si Bong Revilla, saan ba yan? So anyway, hindi ko na babalik, no? Anyway, basta iyan na nakita niyo. Ngayon, gusto ko pakinggan natin ulit yung testimonya laban sa kanya. Dito mo makikita na sobrang lakas ng testimonya laban sa kanya. Kaya pakinggan natin. 'Di, 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 Ito si Yosek Roberto Bernardo. Pakinggan natin.
Pakana o kayo nagbigay daan sa mga irregularidad na ito. Gayunpaman, napagtanto ko na ang isang pagkakamali ay hindi maaaring iwasto ng isa pang pagkakamali. At kung may maisang pamangkaso ay maaaring magtagal ito bago matapos. Sa aking pagkakaalam sa mga nakarang scam, tulad ng ilang kaso ng PDAF, mahigit isang dekada na ang nakalipas, hanggang ngayon ay dinidinig pa. Kawawa ang bayan. Hindi ko matiyak kung ang mga pangunahing may sala sa mga irregularidad na ito ay mapapatawan ng kaukulang parusa sa lalong madaling panahon. Gayunpaman, umaasa ako na sa pamamagitan ng kasulukuyang mga pagdinig ay makakabuo ang ating mga mambabatas ng kaukulang batas na hindi lamang tutugon sa epekto ng mga maanumalyang gawain ito, kundi na rin makakapigil sa pag-ulit nito. The magnitude of the irregularities and how this have gravely affected and will affect our nation and its citizens cannot be overemphasized. I am committed to disclose everything that I know regarding these anomalies, particularly the complicated and ingenious ways by which these were carried out and perpetrated all these years. This, despite the serious threats to my personal safety and that of my family and loved ones. Mula sa aking paninilbihan bilang isang mababang laborer hanggang ako'y naging isang undersecretary, napag-alaman ko na ang profesional na kakayahan at integridad ay maaaring hindi sapat upang matiyak ang tagumpay sa profesional na karera ng isang tao. Nakapaloob sa isang tiwaling sistema kung saan ang isang tao ay pinangakuan ng biyaya o kaya'y pinipilit na lumahok sa mga irregularidad. Ang takot sa maaaring masamang mangyari bunga ng hindi pagsunod o pagnanais na rin sa personal na pakinabang o kaya'y kombinasyon ng dalawang ito ay sumisira sa moral na direksyon ng isang tao. Lalo na kung ang mga dapat na may pangunahing kakayanan na humadlang sa masamang gawain ay siya ring may pakana nito at nagbibigay daan dito. Naniniwala ako na hindi lamang ako ang nakaranas sa sitwasyong ito. Nakikiusap ako sa mga nasa ganitong kalalagayan na magtiwala sa kinauukulan at lumantad na at makipagtulungan sa kasalukuyang investigasyon. In connection with my application for coverage as a state witness under Public Act No. 6981, I have earlier submitted to the Department of Justice a second supplemental affidavit, further clarifying my previous disclosures on the government flood control and other infrastructure projects subject of the present proceedings. Once again, with the assurance of the Honorable Committee that my rights and benefits under RA 6981 shall be respected, I will be submitting the second supplemental affidavit to the Honorable Committee with the prior authority of the Department of Justice through the Honorable Frederick A. Vida, Acting DOJ Secretary, as set out in an authority to disclose, which I am likewise submitting to the Honorable Committee. Thank you po.
Proceed with your statement.
Ito na.
Second supplemental affidavit. I, Roberto R. Bernardo, Filipino, of legal age and a resident of Malolo City, Bulacan, under oath, hereby depose and state. I am submitting this second supplemental affidavit consisted with my desire to set forth my knowledge about the irregularities in government flood control and other infrastructure projects, as well as obtain peace of mind and preserve the truth. Among other factors, the contents of this second supplemental affidavit had to be violated by me by making reference to an assortment of personal notes and records, deep thinking, as well as confirming with persons certain details regarding the time, place, manner, and circumstances under which the events narrated hereunder occurred. Moreover, owing to the passage of time and the fact that I am no longer part of the DPWH following my retirement in August 2025, the process of collecting facts and details had progressed slower than expected, contributing to the delay in the submission of this second supplemental affidavit. Also, I would like to make clear that while the facts narrated below are based on my direct personal knowledge and fortified by official DPWH records, the kickback scheme pertaining to the collection and handoff of the commitments to the relevant public officers occur practically without any paper trail. A statement of facts available to all, applicable to all. Over the decades that I worked for the DPWH, it has always been my philosophy to form good working relationships between and among my bosses and our superiors, inferiors and our subordinates, and other colleagues, even without the promise or expectation of a reward or personal advantage. I would rather troubleshoot problems than develop enemies and immediately address all concerns. I would do this so that I can effectively perform my duties and responsibilities under the DPWH. Unfortunately, this professional orientation of mine has forced me to compromising situations that include the matters narrated hereunder. I reiterate my deep remorse and guilt for what I have done, and I am now animated by an honest desire to help rectify the institutional defects in the systems and operations, not only of DPWH, but also other government agencies, and help in developing lasting and meaningful reforms. I can confirm, based on my personal knowledge, that in some form or another, and on various extents, based on current setup, each and every DPWH official, employee from top and down the line, is buffeted with various avenues of corrupt acts and practices. This would include high-ranking members of the department, such as secretary, undersecretaries, assistant secretaries, regional directors, district engineers, bids and awards committee members, engineers, inspectors, and all the way down to laborers. This is also true for several top officials of other departments and or agencies, such as but not limited to the Department of Finance, Department of Environment and Natural Resources, Department of Health, Department of Education, Department of Agriculture, Department of Agrarian Reform, Department of Transportation, Philippine Charity Sweepstakes, Philippine Coconut Authority, etc. Moreover, I can confirm, based on my personal knowledge, that in some form or another, and on various extents, most proponents have their own designated contractors who will take on the projects for the former's benefit and advantage. Sometimes, other proponents would request me to suggest contractors for them who are known to me or referred to me by friends and other personalities. There are situations that national and local elected politicians would request me to source projects for them. If given more time and opportunity to review the records and confirm supporting facts, I may be able to particularize the details of these transactions and dealings. Senator Ramon Bong Revilla Jr. I have a close and friendly relationship with Senator Ramon Bong Revilla, and we go all the way back since the time of Amay Bisaya and Mayor Viseo, who first introduced me to the former legislator while I was still a district engineer in Laguna, sometime in 2005 or 2006. We frequently meet in important social gatherings. Senator Revilla later on became a godparent of two of my daughters, while I became a godparent to one of his children. When Senator Revilla was incarcerated, I visited him several times at the PNP Custodial Center at Camp Crame. Because of our close relationship, Senator Revilla had asked me for assistance on several matters which I can no longer exactly recall at the moment because this happened a long time ago, and I presently don't have records to help me reconstruct the events.
Hello.
Sometime in the third
Hello.
quarter of 2024, Senator Revilla and I met,
Hello.
where he asked me for a list of projects for funding, ostensibly to help him in his national campaign. When Senator Revilla asked me about the percentage of the commitment, I suggested either 20 or 25, to which Senator Revilla said 25%. Soon thereafter, also in the third quarter of 2024, I asked then District Engineer Henry Alcantara to prepare a list of projects, which he subsequently gave to me. The said projects are enumerated in a list here to attach as Annex A. Moreover, still in the third quarter of 2024, I also asked then District Engineer, but later Regional Director for NCR, Engineer Gerard Opalencia, to prepare a list of projects, which he subsequently gave to me. The said projects are enumerated in a list here to attach as Annex B. I had the list of projects totaling 1.5 billion submitted by Engineer Henry and Engineer Gerard, consolidated in one sheet of paper, and gave the same to Senator Revilla in the third quarter of 2024. With respect to the projects under the NEP and HGAB, I followed this up with Secretary Manny Bonoan upon request of Senator Revilla, who would also follow this up with Yusek Cathy Cabral. The White House compound is the ancestral home of the Revillas with a large Blue Gate entrance at the time. Sometime in the last quarter of 2024, Engineer Alcantara collected the 25% commitment of about 125 million and informed me that the same was ready for turnover through Engineer Gerard Opalencia. Engineer Gerard Opalencia told me that the 25% commitment was already loaded in my vehicle. After receipt of the 25% commitment, which were packed in 6 cardboard boxes, each containing at least 20 million, and 1 paper bag containing 5 million, I called up Senator Revilla to inform him the same is ready to be turned over to him. Sometime December 2024, probably the Monday after my receipt of the commitment, my driver and I went to the residence of Senator Revilla. Upon reaching the area, I tried calling Senator Revilla, but he was not answering my call, so I waited. After waiting for approximately 1 hour at a nearby gasoline station, we were finally allowed inside the compound by the guard. Once inside, we parked the vehicle, and shortly upon alighting, I saw Senator Revilla at the terrace. I walked over to Senator Revilla for a casual talk. While the boxes were being unloaded, Senator Revilla and I talked for about 20 to 25 minutes. I asked him, Sen, bakit hindi ka nangangampanya? Senator Bong replied, okay naman pare, maganda results ng survey. Relax muna. The personnel of Senator Revilla helped in unloading the boxes. After the delivery of the commitment, I headed back to Manila. Sometime late January or February 2025, in relation to a list of projects submitted by Engineer Gerard Opalencia, Senator Revilla called me to follow up on the status of the commitment. About a week later, sometime February 2025, I informed Senator Revilla that the same was ready for turnover. Before the start of the campaign period for national elected positions, I directed one of my aides to deliver commitment amounting to 250 million to the residence of Senator Revilla at the White House compound, Aguinaldo Highway, Bacoor, Cavite. Senator Nancy Binay. Carlin Yap Villa is the aide of Senator Nancy Binay.
Hindi lang ikaw, kaya huwag ka mag-alala, hindi ka nag-iisa. Ito si Nancy Binay kasama.
Who transacted with me regarding the latter's projects and commitment. If I recall correctly, I first met Carlin in the year 2018 during the budget season at the Senate. Eventually, sometime 2019, Yusek Taigip Olivar, whom I knew very well, endorsed Carlin to me. From then on, Carlin would contact me directly to follow up the status of different matters. Sometime fourth quarter in 2022, Carlin, claiming to act on behalf of Senator Binay, asked my help for the transfer of an assistant district engineer in Mindanao to another district a request which I endorsed to Sec. Bonoan. Sometime during the third to fourth quarter of 2022, Carlin requested on behalf of Senator Binay for a list of projects worth around 1.882 billion with 12% commitment. The said projects are enumerated in a list here to attach as Annex C. I got 3% of 1.882 billion. I prepared a list of projects within my area of jurisdiction with the help of DPWH officials, but could not recall at this time exactly who among them gave me the list. But I can recall that it was Engineer Manny Bulusan who coordinated the collection of the commitment. Eventually, during the first quarter of 2023, the commitment was delivered to Carlin for Senator Binay in several tranches in Makati and Quezon City. But I could not recall at this time the details of the deliveries, but I undertake to submit additional information thereon. Sometime last quarter of 2023, Carlin again asked for Senator Binay a list of projects for inclusion and funding under the 2024 GAA, which I provided with the help of Engineer Gerard Apulesio and Engineer Henry Alcantara. The total list of projects initially amounted to 2.5 billion, but which was reduced to 1.672 billion. The said projects are enumerated in the list here to attach as Annex D. Apparently, some individual or group offered Senator Binay a higher amount of commitment of 15% instead of the previous 12% with the promise that the commitment would be released much earlier. Yusek Traigib learned about the plan to transact with this individual or group, and I was informed by Yusek Traigib that he confronted Carlin and said to her, "Bakit nyo binabawasan ng kay Robert? Siya din naman ang nilalapitan ng mga yan pagka nagkakaproblema." However, sometime later part of December 2023, Carlin called me and requested for a 50 million advance for Senator Binay's use for the holiday season because the individual or group was unable to deliver on their promise, and which I then helped to fix. Thereafter, Carlin told me that Senator Binay was expecting an increase in the commitment from 12 to 15%, which I agreed to fulfill. I did not get any percentages from the aforementioned projects worth 1.672 billion, but I was reimbursed the 50 million which I earlier advanced. I was nurturing goodwill with Senator Binay by fulfilling the commitment. Sometime 2024, Carlin requested me to relate to Sec. Bonoan Senator Binay's request for some allocation under the NEP, which I did. Sec. Bonoan allocated 500 million for Senator Binay under the NEP for 2025, which I relate to Carlin. Carlin told me to prepare a list of projects for the 500 million allocation. I then asked a list of projects from Engineer Henry and Engineer Gerard worth 500 million, which I then submitted in person with Sec. Bonoan, who then told me he will instruct Yusek Cabral to include the same in the NEP. The list of projects was included in the NEP for 2025. The said projects are enumerated in a list here to attach as Annex E. Likewise, sometime in the last quarter of 2024, Carlin for Senator Binay asked for a list of projects to be included in the 2025 GAA. I then directed Engineer Henry and Engineer Gerard Apulesio to prepare a consolidated list of projects. I submitted a list of projects totaling 3 billion to Carlin, but only approximately 2.6 billion was included. The said projects are enumerated in a list here to attach as Annex F. After these projects appeared in the GAA, Engineer Bulusan, Engineer Apulesio, and myself collected, raised, and prepared the 15% commitment, which was all turned over to me. There were difficulties in collecting the commitment as there were contractors, congressmen who did not give amount considering the issue of for later release projects totaling approximately 80 million more or less, which I had to advance. Despite this total commitment collected and raised for Senator Binay was 15% of 1.2 billion or around 468 million more or less. I earlier mentioned that the 37 million more or less was delivered at Horseshoe Village, Quezon City, which refers to the amount collected by Engineer Henry Alcantara. But upon full recollection, there were two deliveries. The first delivery amounted to 340 million at a house in Horseshoe Village, Quezon City, and the second delivery amounted to at least 200 million at another house, but also in Horseshoe Village, Quezon City. After the second delivery, Carlin told me, "Kinuha na ni Sir, salamat raw. Hindi ka raw kakalimutan sa Makati." The Sir refers to the husband of Senator Binay. I did not get any percentage from the projects worth 3,120 million for NEP and GAA for Senator Binay. Senator Escudero and Maynard Ngu. I met Maynard Ngu at the Manila City Hall during the term of Mayor Erap, and while I was the city engineer of Manila sometime in 2013. Maynard Ngu is a familiar figure in the social political circles, as he would be handling substantial donations to politicians during election season, including the distribution of mobile phones. During the 2022 national elections, Maynard Ngu approached me and asked for help in raising campaign funds. I and other DPWH officials assisted Maynard Ngu in raising campaign funds. These frequent interactions with Maynard Ngu at the court helped me in building our mutual trust with each other, especially in favor of Senator Escudero, whose interest Maynard Ngu was actively promoting. Maynard Ngu was appointed special envoy to China for trade, investments, and tourism in 2023. When Senator Escudero became
Sino ba nag-appoint? Si Marcos.
Senate President in 2024,
Ibig sabihin, alam ni Marcos ito.
Maynard Ngu approached me and asked for a list of projects for Senator Escudero. Thereafter, sometime in November 2024, I asked Engineer Apulesio to prepare a list of projects for Senator Escudero following my conversation with Maynard Ngu. Thereafter, Engineer Apulesio submitted to me a list of projects for funding. The said projects are enumerated in a list here to attach as Annex G. For the projects located in Valenzuela, Engineer Apulesio through District Engineer Ruel Umali collected the money for the commitment for Senator Escudero. He delivered the commitment at Diamond Hotel. We saw each other at the Diamond Hotel, and Engineer Opolencia told me, nasa inyo na po, boss. When I asked my driver to confirm, the driver told me, nasa akin na po, okay na po. For the projects located in Marinduque, Engineer Opolencia, through Regional Director Ryan Altea, collected the commitment for Senator Escudero. He delivered to me the commitment at Diamond Hotel. Engineer Opolencia called me and said, may papadala ako sa inyo ngayon. Sa iyo ngayon, dadalhin na lang po sa Diamond. Later, the driver told me, nasa akin na po, okay na po. Following a deeper recollection of the facts and checking with public records, I can now confirm that in addition to the Valenzuela and Marinduque projects, Engineer Opolencia also provided the list of projects for Oriental Mindoro and Quezon City. The complete list of projects for Senator Escudero is worth 1.4 billion with 20% commitment. The said projects are enumerated in a list here to attach as Annex H. Sometime early 2025, I made the first delivery of 160 million for Senator Escudero at the Cherry Mobile Building at Maynard Moo in Apacible Street, Manila. Thereafter,
Ang hirap dito Cheese Escudero, cheese!
early 2025, I made the second delivery of 120 million for Senator Escudero, also at the Cherry Mobile Building of Maynard Moo. Senator Jinggoy Estrada.
Personal siya nag-deliver. Nako.
I have known Senator Jinggoy Estrada since I met Senator Jinggoy Estrada through the social circles of Senator Bong Revilla. We usually had encounters during social gatherings of people in the movie industry. We developed a close relationship. Sometime in 2010, when I was Assistant Regional Director of DPWH Region 4A, Senator Jinggoy was backing me to become a Regional Director. When I failed to become a Regional Director, I applied for the position of City Engineer, and Senator Jinggoy was one of those who recommended me. When he was incarcerated, I would visit him, but sometimes together with then City Mayor Joseph Estrada. Sometime in 2023, Senator Jinggoy requested Secretary Bonoan through me for projects worth 500 million. Secretary Bonoan agreed to give 450 million for the DPWH NCR building, which Yusek Cabral included in the NEP for 2024 with an 18% commitment for Senator Jinggoy. Senator Jinggoy called me sometime in the third quarter of 2024 and asked me to request the amount of 1 billion from Sec Bonoan. Senator Jinggoy said, tulungan mo na lang ako dyan kasi marami pa akong tutulungan sa eleksyon. I replied, okay na ba ang 25% Sen? Sen Jinggoy responded, okay na ang 25%. I relayed to Sec Bonoan the request of Sen Jinggoy. The former then asked me to prepare a list of projects for the latter. In turn, I asked Engineer Gerard Opolencia for a list of projects. When Engineer Opolencia gave me the list, I gave it to Secretary Bonoan, who told me that he will give the same to Yusek Cabral and that the latter will take care of it. At the moment, I cannot locate the list or a copy thereof. Later on, I saw that some of these projects totaling 500 million and included in the list I gave to Sec Bonoan were listed in the NEP for that year. These projects, as appearing in the NEP, are enumerated in a list here to attach as Annex I hereof. Thereafter, Senator Jinggoy called me and asked me what happened to the difference of 500 million. I relayed this to Sec Bonoan. The latter replied that he will prioritize the matter as soon as there is available funding. Subsequently, I found out that the projects totaling 200 million were included in the HGAB for 2025. These projects, as appearing in the HGAB, are listed Annex J hereof. However, Senator Jinggoy called me again for the difference of 300 million to complete the 1 billion project value that was requested. During the BICAM, projects worth 750 million were again included in the projects to eventually form part of the 2025 GAA. The said projects are enumerated in a list here to attach as Annex K. The total budget for the projects which appeared in the 2025 GAA is approximately 1.45 billion, more or less. After Engineer Opolencia collected the 25% commitment, approximately 360 million, and delivered the same to Diamond Hotel in Manila. Thereafter, I tasked my driver to deliver the boxes to Sen Jinggoy at the Archaga building in San Juan City. Senator Jinggoy personally confirmed to me his receipt of the commitment and thanked me for the same. During the 2024 budget hearing for 2025 GAA, Engineer Alcantara informed me that Senator Jinggoy gave him funding amounting to 355 million for Bulacan First DEO and 500 million from other districts in Bulacan and requested that he, Engineer Alcantara, prepare lists of projects. The said projects are enumerated in a list here to attach as Annexes L and L-1 respectively. Later on, sometime in the first quarter of 2025, Senator Jinggoy asked me to get the 25% commitment for the aforesaid list of projects from Engineer Alcantara. Engineer Alcantara then delivered to me the 25% commitment, approximately 200.
Kung ako tanongin mo, ano ito bribe ito ni BBM sa kanila para hindi sila kumontra sa gusto ni BBM mangyari
13 million, which I delivered to Senator Jinggoy at the Archaga building in San Juan City. Senator Grace Poe.
Yan, Grace Poe.
Sometime third quarter of 2024, J.Y. De La Rosa, a staff of Senator Grace Poe, requested Sec Bonoan through me if Senator Grace Poe can be accommodated in the DPWH NEP. Sec Bonoan told me there is a 500 million for Senator Grace Poe and instructed me to ask the Senator for a list of projects. J.Y. De La Rosa.
Tanda ko si Grace Poe ang unang kumontra, ang unang nagdepensa bakit tatanggalan ng pundo ng 74.4 billion ang PhilHealth. Yon pala. Gusto niya ilipat sa flood control.
told me to coordinate the matter with Mrs. Patron, a contractor. Mrs. Patron told me to prepare the list. Upon my instructions, Engineer Gerard Apolesha submitted a consolidated list of the following projects, 1 in Laguna and 3 in NCR. These projects are indicated in the list here to attach as Annex M. Thereafter, the list of projects was included in the NEP by Sec Bonoan through Yusek Kati Cabral. Later on, the said projects appeared in the GAA for 2025. There was a 20% commitment collected for Senator Grace Poe. Mrs. Patron, a contractor, collected the commitment for Sen Grace Poe at Diamond Hotel from one of my aides.
Grabe talaga to, notorious pala itong Diamond Hotel.
Congresswoman Mary Mitzi Mitz Kahayon Uy. There were projects released in Congresswoman Kahayon Uy's congressional district, which I facilitated. I submitted projects being proposed by her to propose
Patay ka na, Mitch Kahayon.
for funding, the details of which I am still verifying and confirming at the moment. Congressman Lerida Robes. There were
Yan, Florida Robes, nagkukunwari ka na hindi kurap. Putang inang punyeta kang babae ka.
also projects released in Congresswoman Lerida Robes' congressional district, which I facilitated. I submitted projects being proposed by her to proponents for funding, the details of which I'm still verifying and confirming at the moment. Congressman Zaldico.
O, saldi ko, pinakamarami.
In addition to my statements in my affidavit dated 25 of September 2025, I was told
Bakit siya pinakamarami? Yun pala na, kinukuliktan niya lang para ibigay kay Bongbong Marcos. 2 billion naman.
by Engineer Alcantara. Congressman Zaldi would from time to time deal also with engineers Gerard Pacanan, Gerard Apolesha, and Danny Villa. There were times Engineer Gerard Pacanan and Gerard Apolesha would give me certain amounts, supposedly from Congressman Zaldico. Yusek Traigib Olivar of David. In addition to my statements in my affidavit dated 25 of September 2025, I wish to add that I have known Yusek Traigib as early as 2010 when he was still a staff of Senator Bong Revilla. He is a common figure in budget deliberation hearings and by reason of which I had interacted with him on multiple occasions. Yusek Traigib then worked under the office of Senator Edgardo Angara and then later worked under the office of Senator Sani Angara. When Senator Sani Angara became a chairman of finance, Yusek Traigib and I would have several interactions as part of our work in budget preparations. When Senator Revilla was incarcerated with Senator Jinggoy Estrada, Yusek Traigib and I would frequently call each other so we can help look after the welfare of concerns of Senator Revilla, whom I visited several times with Senator Jinggoy Estrada while they were in detention. Aside from the details I had earlier mentioned in my affidavit dated 25 of September,
Biro mo habang nakakulong yung dalawa, ginagawan mo ng paraan, nagkukurap pa rin. Nakakulong na, nagkukurap pa rin. Grabe.
2025, Yusek Traigib and I also had transactions concerning Senator Angara between 2019
Ganong katindi ha, nasa kulungan ka na, nakakagawa pa ka pa ng pagdadakaw.
and 2024, where Yusek Traigib received deliveries representing 12% of the projects of Senator Sani Angara while the latter was chairman of finance. As I previously mentioned in my affidavit dated 25 of September 2025, Yusek Olivar and I discussed the program appropriations supposedly for the Office of the Executive Secretary. Thereafter, DPWH received a special allotment release order which included projects worth 2.
Hindi ko gusto ang sinasabi ng ilan dito, puro bata ni Duterte. Hindi po bata ni Duterte yan. Mga sariling tao yan. Kung sino ang boss, doon na sila. Kaya huwag niyo sabihin mga batang Duterte yan, si Bong Revilla. Mali po yan.
85 billion. The contract IDs for the projects were 2.85 billion covered by the said SARO can be secured from the records of DPWH Regional Office for Region 3 and the First District Engineering Office of Bulacan. Moreover, in the program appropriate allocation for 2025, there could have been an additional 12 billion more or less funding, which I am verifying and confirming at the moment. DPWH Secretary Mark Villar and Yusek Cabral.
Yan.
I was appointed Assistant Secretary of DPWH by former President Rodrigo Duterte in 2016 during the term of DPWH Secretary Mark Villar. As Assistant Secretary for Operations, I was assigned over the Visayas regions. While I was Assistant Secretary for Operations, I was introduced to Carlo Aguilar, a cousin of Sec Mark Villar. Yusek Cabral was already the Undersecretary for Planning Service when I became Assistant Secretary. As Undersecretary for Planning Service, Yusek Cabral was working closely with Sec Mark Villar for the allocation, listing, and budgeting of all the DPWH infrastructure projects. While I was Assistant Secretary, I was also later designated as Chairman of the Central Bids and Awards Committee, Central Bank. In the later part of 2017, I was promoted to Undersecretary of the DPWH during the incumbency of Senator Mark Villar and took my oath of office as Undersecretary before him. In the first quarter of 2018, I was designated as Undersecretary for Operations for NCR, 4B, and the 3 Visayas regions. Upon my request, I was replaced as Chairman of Central Bank sometime in February 2020 because of political intrigues, as I was reportedly siding with the City of Manila Mayor Isko Moreno, who was vocal against then President Rodrigo Duterte. All of this time, the funding of all projects was cleared through Yusek Cabral for approval by Sec Mark Villar. From time to time, Yusek Cabral would ask me to submit detailed list of projects with regards to lump sum fund allocations of DPWH, which list she sometimes would approve herself or forward to Sec Mark Villar for approval. Among others, this included EDSA and other major roads project allocations, maintenance of creeks and waterways, etc. The commission for these approved projects was 10% and divided as follows: 50% to Carlo Aguilar, presumably for Sec Mark Villar, 25% Yusek Cabral, 25% for myself. Undersecretary Maria Catalina E. Cabral. As a general rule, with very little exceptions, it is Yusek Maria Catalina Cabral, with the imprimatur of Secretary Mark Villar, and later continued by Sec Manny Bonoan, who had control at the DPWH level to remove, include, add, deduct, or modify insertions of items in the NEP for infrastructure or those pertaining to DPWH. Yusek Cabral would tell me that she would communicate and meet legislators to inform them of the amount of their allocations and ask them for titles of projects that they want to include in the DPWH budget. In a matrix of process flow that I have prepared, which I am attaching here to as Annex N, Yusek Cabral has total influence and authority in preparing and finalizing the NEP for infrastructure. On multiple occasions, I personally delivered and also caused to be delivered cash to Yusek Cabral at her house at Tatalon, Quezon City, and other places.
Grabe.
DPWH Secretary Manuel Bonoan. DPWH Secretary Manuel Bonoan is a long-time DPWH official who has held top positions through different administrations. I look up to Sec Bonoan and consider him as a mentor. I treasure his guidance and friendship over the years. Prior to Sec Bonoan's assumption as Secretary of DPWH, I was the Undersecretary for Operations and Planning for NCR, Visayas, having assumed the said position in 2018. Unlike during the time of Sec Mark Villar, when I was not given much task, even removed as back chairman, and had very limited operational functions during the COVID pandemic period, Sec Bonoan entrusted me with more operational functions and let me work more closely with Yusek Cabral. Sometime in 2022, Sec Bonoan directed me to submit a list of projects for possible inclusion in the NEP for fiscal year 2023 worth around 450 million. Without question and delay, I asked Bulacan First DO for a list of projects for funding. Thereafter, Engineer Alcantara submitted to me a list of projects for funding under the NEP. Those projects are indicated in the list here to attach as Annex O. In compliance with this order, I forwarded the list to Sec Bonoan. He told me that Undersecretary for Planning Maria Catalina Cati Cabral shall facilitate and ensure the inclusion of these projects in the NEP. Engineer Alcantara gave the 10% of the value of the projects. Similarly, in 2023, Sec Bonoan directed me to submit a list of projects for possible inclusion in the NEP for fiscal year 2024 worth around 150 million. Again, without question and delay, I asked Bulacan First DO for a list of projects for funding. Thereafter, Engineer Alcantara submitted to me a list of projects for funding under the NEP. Those projects are indicated in the list here to attach as Annex P. In compliance with this order, I forwarded the list to Sec Bonoan. In compliance with this order, I forwarded the list to Sec Bonoan. Sec Bonoan said that Yusek Cabral shall again facilitate and ensure the inclusion of these projects in the NEP. Engineer Alcantara gave 15% of the value of the projects. Also in the year 2024, Sec Bonoan also directed me to submit a list of projects for possible inclusion in the NEP for fiscal year 2025 for the amount of 900 million. I asked Bulacan First DO for a list of projects for funding. Thereafter, Engineer Alcantara submitted to me a list of projects for funding under the NEP. Those projects are indicated in the list here to attach as Annex Q. In compliance with this order, I forwarded the list to Sec Bonoan. Sec Bonoan said that Yusek Cabral shall again facilitate and ensure the inclusion of these projects in the NEP. Engineer Alcantara gave 20% of the value of the projects. With respect to the commitments collected by Engineer Alcantara narrated above, Secretary Bonoan and I received a percentage. In many instances during budget deliberations, I was tasked by Sec Bonoan to talk to legislators over their funding and other concerns, and to forward these concerns to Yusek Cabral for action and resolution. Sec Bonoan and Yusek Cabral. Every year, including years 2023, 2024, and 2025, Yusek Ati Cabral apportions the budget ceiling for the DPWH's allocable NEP among the districts according to the endorsed programs, activities, and projects. PAPs. Although she would make it appear that 100% allocable NEP had been apportioned, Yusek Ati Cabral would reserve a substantial percentage of that allocable NEP for her and Sec Bonoan's preferred projects. Sec Manny Bonoan would from time to time ask me to take charge of part of his own reserve allocations. The value of the projects that I handled for Sec Bonoan was at least 5 billion per annum for the years 2023, 2024, and 2025, with an average of 15% commitment. Of this 15% average commitment, Sec Bonoan 75% usually would give. Of this 15% average commitment, Sec Bonoan 75% usually would give me 25% of the commitment, with the rest of the commitment shared between him and Yusek Ati Cabral. Yusek Ati Cabral herself took charge of her own reserve allocations. Once again, I humbly reserve the right to submit another supplementary affidavit if warranted in the premises. I attest to the truth of the foregoing statement.
So yan po ang ano. So narinig natin uli, medyo sa tuwing bagong pagkakarinig natin, medyo nakaklaro, lalong nakaklaro. So nakita naman ninyo, I do believe as an experienced trial lawyer, mataas na po ang uri ng ebidensya na bit-bit ni Robert Bernardo. Yusek pa siya nung posisyon niya. Alam na alam niya ang nangyayari, kaya mataas ang uri ng kanyang ebidensya na bit-bit. Kaya I predict, makukonvict po rito si Bong Revilla Makukonvict si Jinggoy Estrada. Makukonvict din si Nancy Binay. Makukonvict din si Grace Poe. Kay Villar, mukhang makukonvict din. Marami po sila. Kaya yan po ang ating kasama na pong iba doon. Kaya tama din si Cassandra Daisy na gumanti ata yung kaluluwa ni Atty. Richard Cambe. So sabi ni Where is Bonoan, stress pa rin, sabi ni Cassandra Daisy. May bahay pa, nagsalita ka na rin sa pagnanakaw. Tapos si Blesilda Good, Rafi Tolfo, kung gusto mo ng super discreet na low profile meeting place, Diamond Hotel. Kaya pala doon pala sila sa Diamond Hotel lagi sa Yurakuen Japanese Restaurant. So ang pugi, puro mga bata ni Duterte, hindi po para mga bata Duterte. Hindi po bata ni Duterte, puro mga kwanyon, mga sip-sip. Naging bata sila Duterte sa panahon Duterte, sila naman bata ngayon ni Marcos. Ganun na po kasimple. Huwag ka magsabi na Duterte po sila. Princess Nicole, habang ang mga Duterte naghahanap ng pundo no panggawa ng tulay, ang mga magnanakaw, ang laro lang ay basketball, dribble, tapos shoot ang mga kawatan. Bergie Piquero, follow the president, magnanakaw. How? Grabe kasi kurap ang puno hanggang kapag kurap talaga presidente nangyayari po yan. Rafi Tulfo, FY sa Demon Hotel, o binabanggit niya pala Demon Hotel din. Castro Teresita Gavinia, hindi natauhan itong si Revilla na ito'y plunder na noon. Dapat binago na nila, binigyan na ng pagkakataon magbago pero tinuloy pa rin. Nilda Carpus, grabe mga matakaw sa pera, hindi manaawa sa taong bayan. Kaya nangyari nga, buwan sa tip, isuloy sa tip eh. Parang ganon. Cassandra Daisy, kaluluwa ni Atty. Cambe, nasa lupa pa para gumanti kay Revilla. Siya ang magdudusa sa pagnanakaw ni Revilla. So tapos si Elgin Rizon. Engineer, ba't mahina boses mo? Lakasan mo mahina ba? So tingin ko naman ay malakas na rin. Cassandra Daisy, Denby Elasion. Tapos si Rana Indo, 1. Nakakawa po ang ating bansa. Ang mga Pilipino binibigyan ng halaga ay ang politics, hindi na ang bansa. Tapos Fernando Rafael Cuervo, muy buenas días. Muy buenas días también, Señor Fernando Rafael Fernandez Cuervo. Gregorio Pukit, di pa kasi nadadala, bakit may umulit pa? Tama, nakatamina, mamo. Yan, nakatiming din sa Konnichiwa, mamo. Okay, Elcid Pablo, wala nang pag-asang Pilipinas. Mark Carlson, tapos Bergie Piquero, Danilo Thailand, Naimbaga Malim, Doktor, Attorney. Sige, maya pagat panapon. Magandang hapon, maayong hapon, maupay nga kulop. Sa lahat, marahay na hapon sa mga Bicolano. Brad Dennis Kausing, Pastor Rudy Rabi, sino pa? Stephen King. So, yan po ang ating episode sa ngayon. So, ang sagot natin kay Revilla, nanghingi ng dasal, huwag ka mag-alala, may sinasabi sila, may kasama ka. Francisco Monton, good po yung totoo, mabuti. Sana yung 60 billion na transfer nila sa isauli, hindi pa po nasa uli. Makatang Tambay, ubos ang 6 years na sa kasangga ng gobyerno sa mga kapalpakan nila, walang service. Kaya nga palpak po ang pamahalaan ng BBM. So hanggang yan po, maraming salamat po. Paki-share, paki-like, at yung mga iba paki-skip po huwag i-skip ang ads ko para naman makatulong kayo sa akin. Ito lamang po ang aking napapalakas para sa ako'y magpatuloy na magbibigay sa inyo ng magandang mga komento, mag-interpret kung ano nangyari, at sa sunod pag-usapan natin, siguro explain ko sa inyo ng buong buo kung ano yung tinatawag na PhilHealth na decision ng Supreme Court, at ayaw pa rin sumurindir si Marcos, buwang talaga. Itcha-challenge pa rin, mag-file pa rin ng motion for reconsideration. Hanggang dyan na po at magandang hapon po sa lahat.